Hi there, my name is Tricia with the Coffee County Library in Burlington, and I'm here to do our next installment of Grown Up Storytime. Today's book is called Bossypants by Tina Fey. As always, this book is available for checkout at the Burlington Library. The Windy City, Full of Meat. The most fun job I ever had was working at a theater in Chicago called the Second City. If you've never heard of the Second City, it's an improvisation and sketch comedy theater in Chicago founded in 1959 by some University of Chicago brainiacs. There's a Second Sun Theater in Chicago and one in Toronto, and between the two they have turned out some mind-blowing alumni, including John Belushi, Gilda Radner, Dan Aykroyd, Chris Farley, John Candy, Catherine O'Hara, Eugene Levy, Andrea Martin, Steve Carell, Amy Sedaris, Amy Poehler, and Stephen Colbert. I could go on, but my editor told me that was a cheap way to flesh out the book. I moved to Chicago in 1992 to study improv, and it was everything I wanted it to be. It was like a cult. People ate, slept, and definitely drank improv. They worked at crappy day jobs just to hand over their money for improv classes. Eager young people in khakis and polo shirts were willing to do whatever teachers like Del Close and Martin DeMatt told them to do. In retrospect, it may actually have been a cult. I had studied legit acting methods in college. Stanislavski, Meisner, Cicely Berry's The Actor and His Text, but any TV critic will tell you that I never mastered any of them. Improvisation as a way of working made sense to me. I love the idea of two actors on stage with nothing, no costumes, no sets, no dialogue, who make up something together that is then completely real to everyone in the room. The rules of improvisation appealed to me not only as a way of creating comedy, but as a worldview. Studying improvisation literally changed my life. It set me on a career path toward Saturday Night Live. It changed the way I look at the world, and it's where I met my husband. What has your cult done for you lately? When I first started working at the Second City, there were 2 resident companies and 3 touring companies. The resident companies would write and perform original sketch comedy shows for packed houses in Chicago. The touring companies would take the best pieces from these shows and perform them in church basements and community centers around the country. We traveled by van to all kinds of destinations, from upstate New York to St. Paul, Minnesota to Waco, Texas. In the touring company, we were paid $75 per show and $25 per diem. Of course, sometimes you'd have a show in Kansas, followed by a show in Texas, followed by another show in Kansas, so you'd have to ride in the van for 2 days to get your $75 gig. It wasn't lucrative, but it was show business. There were 3 touring companies: Red Company, Green Company, and Blue Company. I was in the Blue Company, or Blue Co, as we called it to be unbelievably cool. I still feel affection for the members of Blue Co, like we served in the military together, specifically the French military, because we were lazy and a little bit sneaky. For example, they once sent us on a tour of Texas and the Midwest, and the moment the van pulled away from the theater, we all agreed to throw out the best of sketches we had been directed to perform and replace them with our own original material. Amy Poehler, in particular, was tired of being handed dated old blonde girl roles where all her lines were things like, "How's your coffee, honey?" or "Mr. Johnson will see you now," or "What do you mean a blind date?" Each night we'd pull out an old sketch and replace it with something of our own. My friend Ali Faranakian, who is a genius in many ways, wrote a very funny monologue about the McDonald's Big Mac. During the course of the monologue, he would eat an entire Big Mac, extra value meal, on stage. Because the meal was technically a prop, he made the stage manager buy it for him every night, and he kept his $25. These were the kinds of skills you learned touring for the Second City. By the time we returned to Chicago 10 days later, the best of show was completely gone, and we were in big trouble. Except we didn't really care. Bossypants, lesson number 183. You can't boss people around if they don't really care. The producers tried to punish Blue Co by giving us the worst gigs. Prom shows were held at 1 a.m. after high school prom, and attendance was mandatory. It was basically a way to keep kids from drinking or having sex on prom night, and the performers hated doing these shows almost as much as the kids hated watching them. Imagine how mad you would be if you were missing out on a toothy knob job to watch some cult members make up a song about the 1996 election. There were other terrible shows: brightly lit hotel ballrooms with broken microphones, college shows where the kids were all drunk, charity buyouts where the audience was very, very sober, corporate gigs at 8 a.m. for employees who were there to be told about reductions in their health care benefits. Basically, anytime you were performing for an audience that was not there voluntarily, it was a rough show. After 7 or 8 months of touring, we started to wonder which of us actors would get promoted to one of the main companies. The main stage cast and the Second City, etc. cast got to stay in Chicago and earn a unionized living wage. They would develop their own sketches by improvising in front of an audience, then keeping the ideas that had worked until they had a full 2-hour show. It was the dream job. However, of all the places I've worked that were supposedly boys' clubs, the Second City was the only one where I experienced institutionalized gender nonsense. For example, a director of one of the main companies once justified cutting a scene by saying, "The audience doesn't want to see a scene between 2 women." What? More on that later. In 1995, each cast at the Second City was made up of 4 men and 2 women. When it was suggested that they switch one of the companies to 3 men and 3 women, the producers and directors had the same panicked reaction. "You can't do that. There won't be enough parts to go around. There won't be enough for the girls." This made no sense to me, probably because I speak English and have never had a head injury. We weren't doing Death of a Salesman. We were making up the show ourselves. How could there not be enough parts? Where was the yes and? If everyone had something to contribute, there would be enough. The insulting implication, of course, was that women wouldn't have any ideas. I'm happy to say the producers did jump into the 20th century and switch to a cast of 3 and 3, and I got to be that 3rd woman in the first gender-equal cast. However, I must say as a point of pride that I didn't get the job because I was a woman. I got the job because Amy Poehler had moved to New York with the Upright Citizens Brigade, and I was the next best thing. But this was the first time I experienced what I like to call the myth of not enough. When I worked at Saturday Night Live, I had a 5 a.m. argument with one of our most intelligent actresses. It was rumored that Lauren was adding another woman to the cast, and she was irate. In fairness, she was also exhausted. It was 5 a.m. after writing all night. She felt there wouldn't be enough for the girls, and that this girl was too similar to her. There wouldn't be enough screen time to go around. I revived my old argument. How could this be true if we made up the show? A bunch of us suggested that they collaborate instead of compete, and of course that's what they did with great success once they were actually in a room together. But where does that initial panic come from? This is what I tell young women who ask me for career advice. People are going to try to trick you, to make you feel that you are in competition with one another. You're up for a promotion. If they go with a woman, it'll be between you and Barbara. Don't be fooled. You're not in competition with other women. You're in competition with everyone. Also, I encourage them to always wear a bra. Even if you don't think you need it. Just, you know what? You're never going to regret it. My dream for the future is that sketch comedy shows become a gender-blind meritocracy of whoever is really the funniest. You might see 4 women and 2 men. You might see 5 men and a YouTube video of a kitten sneezing. Once we know we're really open to all the options, we can proceed with whatever's the funniest, which will probably involve farts. Thank you for joining me in reading Bossypants by Tina Fey. We'll see you next month.